What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Influence. Today, I have Joules, the marketing lead for Sahara AI, to talk about what they're doing and building, as well as their overall marketing and branding strategy. Joules, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here, man. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great sunny day in Los Angeles over here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, man. I'm sure people would love to know a little bit more about your backgrounds, maybe how you got into, marketing in general, as well as maybe what led up to Sahara AI and your role there.
Yeah, I have a bit of an unconventional backstory to my both my personal and my professional crypto journey. Like many, I started out as a Bitcoin maxi. I got into Bitcoin in
Nice.
it was like the end of 2015. I didn't really do
Okay.
much at that point, right? Ethereum was barely even a thing.
Hmm.
Then the ICO boom happened in 2017, and I made a lot of money, lost a lot of money. I was in
Hmm.
grad school at the time. So I was actually getting my master's in nuclear nonproliferation and terrorism studies. And my specialization was financial crime management. And I realized, hey, I've been following this thing called Bitcoin for quite a while. And I'm really passionate about this, anti-money laundering stuff. And there's some synergy here, right?
Sure.
So I ended up working for a blockchain analytics firm. They just got out of stealth. They were like one of the first doing any kind of blockchain analytics, trying to figure out where criminals are using their cryptocurrency. And I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. Let's do it. And have been in Web3 crypto ever since professionally. And it's kind of been a wild ride. We eventually got bought out by Mastercard.
Hmm.
Then DeFi summer hit not too long after that. So I was like, okay, no longer a Bitcoin maxi. I'm an ETH maxi now. Switch sides real quick. Joined an Ethereum infrastructure company. Then AI became a really big thing, and now I'm kind of here at Sahara.
Excellent. That's quite a whirlwind journey. What inspired you to get into marketing and that kind of side of it?
Yeah, I never honestly saw myself as a marketer. I thought I was going to go into probably some like government work.
Hmm.
Um, and when I started working for that first company, that blockchain analytics firm, I told myself, so I was director of cryptocurrency intelligence. I was like, no, I'm an intelligence worker. I'm like analyzing the blockchain and writing all of these, educational pieces, these blogs, these use cases, totally from like an intelligent perspective. And I realized I really liked doing it. And
Hmm.
I was working directly under the CMO. It was just me and him. And by the end of my tenure, my tenure there, I realized, okay, yes, I am a marketing person. I really enjoyed the marketing side. I really like telling these stories and being
Hmm.
able to reach these audiences. So at my next company was Blocknative. They were doing Ethereum infrastructure, and I joined their marketing team. And I I had a blast just diving deep into like creating educational content, understanding what people's issues were, and how we can fix those issues, and being able to explain that to them in a way that is easy to understand, and haven't looked back.
Awesome. That's very cool. And then what is Sahara AI? If you could give like a good overview of what you guys are working on in particular. I know the AI space is blossoming right now. There's tons of different people working on different things uh, in in the LLM side of the space as well. What do you guys focus on in particular?
Yeah, so Sahara AI is a full stack AI native blockchain ecosystem where anybody can basically go in and create, contribute to, and monetize AI development. It's all basically about creating a collaborative space where AI development is open, accessible, and rewarding for everybody, right? So within our blockchain, right, we have our Sahara blockchain. We also have a comprehensive platform that consists of our data services platform. That's for data labeling, data refinement, and then we have our end-to-end developer platform where AI developers can go in and find the data, the models, the tools, the compute resources that they need to create, to monetize, and deploy their AI.
And then what does your role kind of look like within the company as a marketing lead? What's your day to day? What are your responsibilities, key things that you work on?
Oh gosh, we have a very tight marketing team. So it's as you probably are aware, right? At a startup, you kind of do a little bit of everything. So
Hmm.
um, I think I start my morning out just kind of walking my dog and checking Slack, figuring out any fires that we have to put out, reading the latest that goes in through AI. I thought Web3 moved fast. When you join the AI space, AI moves even faster than Web3, so it's kind of crazy.
Hmm.
So making sure I'm all caught up there. I work personally on anything that's basically written words. So whenever we have PR inquiries, whenever we are posting on social, whenever we're doing emails, whenever we're doing blogs, lots of research that goes into that, lots of setup, lots of strategizing. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast the AI space is. I always thought Web3 was so fast paced, nothing else was going to really eclipse it at any point in time. And then AI came around, and just in the last 2 years, it's exponentially faster. And there's so many different companies and solutions, and so many different things that are cropping up nowadays. And it's hard to keep up with, and they're updating their models all the time and running different benchmarks. And there's so much in the news cycle. I bet that's quite a lot to try to wrap your mind around.
It is. It's also really fun. OpenAI, I think just yesterday released an update to their image generation model, and it's super freaking powerful. So you can
That's
basically put any
for
image in.
Omni 4, right?
Yeah. So it's for 4.0. And you basically go in and just I see a bunch of people just turning their images into like different styles. And I
Yeah,
started
yeah.
sending a bunch of graphic. I like my brother is obsessed with Dragon Ball Z. So I was like, hey, send me a picture
Hmm.
of you and your daughter. And I just sent them like Dragon Ball Z versions of of
Yeah,
this selfie he took.
I've been seeing it all day long. Actually, there's a whole trend going on right now on X where people are taking their photos and turning them into a Ghibli style photo, and it's just gone viral, and my whole feed is just populated with it.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's pretty wild. So, part of the show is we try to focus on what people are doing in terms of building and leveraging influence for marketing purposes. And I think it's a very key thing in a very loud world. This idea of influence and how people approach it. I read that you guys also, you helped grow Sahara's AI waitlist from 20,000 to over 2 million potential users. That's some crazy cool growth there. I'm curious what some of the marketing initiatives you used that were successful, and maybe how you went about implementing some of those.
Yeah, I love this question. Actually, we've now grown to over 3.5 million signups on our wait list. So it's been a
Nice.
pretty wild
Congrats.
ride. Yeah, pretty wild ride already. I think I have a lot of thoughts here. I think that a hype can be a very powerful accelerant, but I think it's also a double-edged sword, right? We found that hype has to be paired with quality user acquisition strategies. Otherwise, you're basically left with vanity metrics that have no real impact on creating a real ecosystem, right? Personally, I'm data obsessed. I've always led with a data driven approach. So anti-simple mechanisms were crucial. Like I can't emphasize crucial enough, but like
Hmm.
crucial from day one for me, right? Because if you can't track and filter bots, if you can't track and filter low quality leads, you risk just getting buried in all of the noise, right? And at the end of the day, growth only really matters if it's real growth. I think a lot of teams chase these big numbers, and it makes sense, right? I think in crypto, especially, right? People look at your numbers. People see how many users do you have, how many followers do you have, how many likes do you have before they even decide to look into your project. So, to some degree, hype is necessary. But I think a lot of teams in Web3 chase these really big numbers, but they don't really think about what that means or how it relates to also needing um, to generate sustainable high signal growth, right?
Hmm.
And these growth campaigns just can't be the end all be all, right? We've run Galaxy campaigns, similar, quest based campaigns, and I personally found in the past that those don't really generate the most loyal, most organic, most aligned, I'll say, users with your ecosystem. It tends to really just lack that stickiness, right?
Hmm.
So what we did differently, obviously, we did a little bit of that for like bootstrapping of our community, but what we did differently and found was really effective was we built our own kind of growth task mechanism, right? We called it Sahara Legends. It's a fully branded, gamified growth campaign with its own UI. And what I really liked about it was that um, it enables users to interact with their ecosystem in a variety of ways, right? We have different social quests such as follow, repost, etc., right? That you usually see in a lot of these campaigns, these like quest campaigns. But we also have technical tasks. We have different ways to interact with different parts of our ecosystem, and it all feels like this big adventure because that's how we built it, right? And the deeper you get into this growth campaign that we built, this Sahara Legends, the other thing that I really like is the more you get to learn about the lore that we built, and the team is really proud of the lore that we built. So the campaign is guided by Bitsy. She's our Fennec Box mascot, really cute. And as you go through all of these different campaigns, you're basically led through this narrative of these 5 legendary deserts, and each of these deserts represents a different core pillar of our platform. And they're all like under threat from this obscura, which is this it's just this like symbolic force that we created that represents, broken systems and centralization. And yeah, I love it. People have loved it. People have found it really interesting, and people like being able to interact with their ecosystem through this incentivized growth campaign.
Interesting. That kind of leads into the next question I had about branding, and narratives in particular, and how strong those can be and compelling for bringing someone into a brand and helping them relate to it, helping them understand it. For you, what goes into that process? Like, do you look at the brand and you say, what are the main core pillars or messages, and then how do we encapsulate that into something like a mascot or something into a persona for the brand? Like some brands go with a very funny take in terms of how they put out their content. Some people are more educational, some are more intuitive or reflective on things that are happening, that are trending. Or I'm just curious, like, is there a strategy that you take in terms of kind of melding that narrative?
Yeah, that's a great question. When it comes to branding, right? With Sahara specifically, I started with one big question. It's how do we make AI feel accessible, empowering, and fair, right? Not extractive. Everybody finds AI, the narrative kind of tends to be that AI is very like extractive, especially decentralized AI players. They're just extracting your data, right? And that's the emotional core to everything that we're building, right? Emotion, I believe, is key if you want a message to be sticky. So you have to find that emotional component. When it comes to Sahara specifically, we're building for 3 distinct, but still interconnected groups, right? We have developers, AI developers, we have these data contributors, and then we just have the everyday like AI consumers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is creating this message that's going to speak to all 3 of them without sounding generic, right?
Sure.
You kind of mentioned it before, right? There's all of these AI players already that are trying to speak to the same people, and if you look at any of their messaging, it all just kind of sounds the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had to build a strong narrative, and we built this narrative around these shared values, right? Transparency, control, ownership, collaboration. Whether you're building models or you're contributing your data, right? You deserve to have agency. So with that in mind, right, that thought of like agency and control, we were able to create we were able to essentially create this like unified brand ethos around the slogan, your knowledge, your AI. And we found that really sticked. People really, really like that. We kind of tested out some other ones throughout my tenure here. And your knowledge, your AI was always kind of the one that just stayed sticky. So people loved it. And everything that we kind of did, all the messaging that we've done around it has been around that like ethos of your knowledge, your AI. But it's important to note that, branding isn't a one and done thing, right? It's a conversation. Mm-hmm. And like I said, we tested that out. We're going to continue to test things out. We're going to continue to test out new messaging as we release new products, as the mindshare changes within the industry. And that's kind of one of the things I like the most about marketing is that it's always changing, just like Web3 and AI.
Yeah, I feel like marketing is always evolving at a rapid rate too, maybe even faster than some of these industries. It feels like there's a new trend, there's something else popping up like on a week-to-week basis, day-to-day basis. Like just today, we're just talking about how ChatGPT's like for Omni is, sparking like a whole viral trend of, Ghibli image generation around profile photos and stuff like that. Which I imagine maybe is something you guys will tap into as well, just because it's a good thing, good trend right now. Oh, yeah. Do you guys also like, I think you mentioned emotion earlier too. Like, is that also kind of a key opponent into, getting people to engage with the brands and getting them to kind of interact? Like there's, eliciting excitement and curiosity. Some people go for a shock and awe type of campaign. Like, are you guys on one of those sides of the spectrums in terms of how you tap into emotion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am on the side. I'm an educator. I probably missed this part of my spiel because it gets so long, but I'm also a professor. So I teach at my old grad school. Um,
Mhm.
and I've always been on the side of education. And people want to be educated, and educational content is king, right? Content is king, yes, always.
Mhm.
Educational content in specific is like king. And when you're creating these like educational content or any content in general, right? Like you need to have that emotional story. And I think a lot of people, I'm going to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but a lot of people like to talk about their products. They just talk about what their product is, right? They don't talk about the emotions behind their product. They don't talk about what it enables you to do and become, right? And I think that's where a lot of Web3 marketers in particular tend to slip up and not do well, is over focusing on the product and not bringing in that emotional aspect, right? And part of bringing in that emotional aspect is education, right? Especially when it comes to Web3 and AI. A lot of this stuff is so technical, it's so
Mhm.
complicated. You have to teach them why it matters, why they should care, what it can do for them, right? So, education is your biggest asset. If people don't understand what's happening, why it matters, they're not going to care about your brand, no matter how good it is, right? But if you can break through and you can break it down into easy pieces and you can actually help them to get it, that's when you earn their trust. That's when people stick with you. And that's why I believe that you should always teach first and then the credibility is going to follow, right? The stickiness is going to follow.
Are there any like tricks in terms of, the educational part of it? Like obviously Web3 and AI can be very complex and have a lot of big terminology and new words and new phrases and a lot of things people probably aren't that familiar with, even for a developer, who's supposed to really understand, the technical details under the hood for a lot of these different things. It can be quite difficult to wrap your mind around, especially in, like we mentioned, these fast-paced industries where they're constantly changing. Um, is there a way that you guys kind of go about doing that, or that you go about doing that? Maybe can also be coupled with the next question on, content strategy, because I think those two kind of go hand in hand. Is there a strategy for that in particular? When you go about educating, do you focus on, creating, tweet threads? Do you focus on creating like video content? Is it more about getting people into a community so you can kind of engage with them there and go more in depth, or from like a webinar, let's sit down and do a webcast type of perspective? I'm
Mhm.
sure there's like a million different ways to go about this, but like, do you guys have a strategy?
Yes, I absolutely have a strategy. And I think this is something I'm really passionate about. It's something that I kind of learned when I was in grad school, actually, reading a lot of these like technical papers and just thinking, why the hell does everybody have to talk this way? Like, there's a
Hmm.
way easier way to say everything I just read in this paper. And that's what I kind of like to bring to my marketing, right? Is I love dealing with these technical, complicated stuff, but I think people make it way too overcomplicated, right? I think what I do is I intentionally avoid jargon heavy messaging, right? I think too many people, especially in Web3, and especially in AI, try to sound too smart. They think that if you don't use all of this technical jargon everywhere, then your audience, especially if it's like a dev audience or an audience that they think is technical, a lot of founders in particular assume that that audience is going to think less of you if you're not using that technical jargon.
Hmm.
But what they don't understand is that you need to speak to a wide audience, and you have to make it. You have to do that without overcomplicating things, right? That's what resonates. People want to understand something simple. They don't want to have to think. Could go into a number of brands that I've seen in this space where I'm like, I'm deeply ingrained in this space. I know a lot about Web3. I know a lot about AI. I've seen web pages and projects that I'll read their like content, and I'm like, I have no idea what you do as a company. All I read were buzzwords. And I think that's something that we really need to get away from, um, especially if you want your project to be successful, right? I'm also a believer in credibly neutral content, right? Especially when we're making like educational content. You want it to be credibly neutral. And this is a bit of a hot take
Yeah.
because people love to show. But I've seen way too many people treat every single piece of content as a sales pitch. And people see right through that. I think people, especially in this industry, have a very high BS meter, and they can see through all of the all the hyperbolic language, right? If you're like, we are the best at, or the very, greatest at, highest speeds, like a lot of that, even if it's true, people automatically read that as BS, right? So you want to make sure that your content is credibly neutral. You want to make sure that it's not too salesy, right? People love educational content. The best educational content that I've seen and that does the best keeps things credibly neutral, right? You gain that credibility by being the one that's teaching somebody, not by overly selling how your product fits into this solution, right? Like, just if I'm teaching you about, let's say, I'll go with AI, right? There's this thing called, let's say I want to teach you about trusted execution environments, right? TEE. If I write a blog about that, the blog shouldn't be all about how we at Sahara fit into this like TEE thing, right? It should be explaining what TEE is, right? What potential downfalls it has. And then maybe at the end, you can include like how we help. But too many projects I see, they just, clickbait people. It's like, here's a blog all about TEE, and then it's just all about you and your company, right? But you haven't really taught me anything. And people don't like that. And that leaves a bad impression in people's mouths.
Yeah, so I have another podcast called Blockhash, and that's exactly what I do. Is I talk to all these companies, particularly their founders and CEOs, a lot of the time, and a lot of them are in the Web3 side of the space. More and more, I'm starting to interview those that are in like AI and metaverse and IoT and DeepIn and things like that. But especially in Web3, they get so overly technical, and there's, I don't know, I won't name names. There's some that are like, so overly technical. I think it's almost detrimental for them to come on the podcast and do an interview, because it's like anyone watches it, they're like, I don't understand what just happened or what they just said, or because it's just like too in the weeds with what the tech is, and there's no good way to like kind of break it down, and too many buzzwords, too much terminology. And then the ones that I've noticed that have done the best with it have, really found a way to distill down what they do, so that an average user, an average developer, another company that might, be leveraging them for some reason, can really understand what it is they actually do. But also what some of those benefits are too, right?
No.
If you use them, like, are you going to save money? Is it faster? Is it more convenient? Does it plug into all the software that you currently use? How easy is it to integrate? All these things, they seem like the best projects, the best companies, they seem to have a really good way at making things consumable for people, but also kind of relatable, so that it's like, it's fun to pay attention, and it's not like, too boring either. So it's the only downfall of education, and I like education, is that if it's too technical, it can be too boring. And so there's like a fine balance between like, let's have some fun, let's engage, let's, make it, not so scary, but at the same time, like, here's the benefit, here's what we do, here's the additive, essentially.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of founders who, are over focused on that technical aspect, and I have a bit of advice for anybody who might be dealing with similar issues in their work. The way I like to explain it to people is, there's a difference between accuracy and precision, right? Yes, we're working in something super technical, so it is absolutely important to always be accurate. However, the level of precision you have in that accuracy is going to vary depending on the audience you're talking to, right? If I'm talking directly to somebody who's a developer, yes, okay, be super nerdy, speak their language. But when we're trying to attract general audiences, when we're trying to just speak on a podcast, create a blog, right? Have that top of funnel, we don't have to be so precise that we're using these highly technical terms, right? We can still have that accuracy while opening up things and being a little more, a little less technical in the language we're using, and keep things a little higher level. And I think a lot of founders tend to get scared at that, but it's something that you really have to do if you want to grow.
The next thing I wanted to ask you is about some of the challenges in the space, being in AI. Obviously, it's something that's, again, been around for just a couple of years. It's evolving super, super rapidly, driving both positive and negative narratives all over the place in the minds of consumers, developers, regulators, who knows what. With all this in mind, what are some of the most common hurdles that you see or you guys run into in terms of, um, dealing with marketing Sahara, as well as how you guys kind of go about overcoming some of those in the minds of other people that are seeing Sahara as a brand?
I think it's hard when you're doing something new, and decentralized AI is still a very new and developing category, right? So a large part of, the job is category creation, which means I'm not just marketing Sahara, I'm also explaining why this whole new model needs to actually exist, right? Um, Another big challenge is cutting through all the noise. We kind of spoke, quite a bit about
Yeah.
this earlier, but the AI space is just overflowing with hype, right? And it's easy to get lumped in with the next flashy vaporware project. And I have to make a point to keep Sahara grounded, right, in real use cases and real people and real products. And if you look at any of the top AI projects that are like out right now, right, they all lead by example. They showcase what they're actually building, they highlight their community, and they let the results just speak for themselves, and instead of just using buzzwords. And that's the bar that I try to hold us to.
Last part here in the podcast is called Rapid Fire. This is something new that I'm doing that seems to be pretty popular with people now, where we're going to have a little fun moment in the episode where we're going to do a short series of questions and answers. So essentially, I'll ask you a very simple question, and then you can give me whatever comes to the top of your mind in terms of an answer, if that makes sense.
Let's let's do it.
You'll get the hang of it in a second.
Yeah.
So the first question is, in terms of community, what do you prefer, Discord or Telegram?
Discord. Telegram just feels like you're shouting into a void of like a million bots.
Actually, this is a good question too, to kind of stem off of this, but how do you navigate the bots? Is that you just have to have other bots filter out bots, or do you just have to message it correctly?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's also it has a multifaceted answer, so it depends on where the bots are.
Yeah.
I've implemented lots of anti-Sybil measures for like Sahara, just because you get so many people. When there's hype, there's always going to be bots, right? So making sure that you have everything in place to stop the bots, not just from your Discord, which we get inundated with bots, so constantly having to purge, but like all of our forums, right, constantly attacked by bots. So making sure that we have measures in place to be able to know who is a bot, who's not a bot, remove them, not give like valuable whitelist spots to just like bots and farmers, but to genuine community members is really, really important, especially as you're trying to build out that community. Telegram, it's a little harder. Yeah. Telegram's still kind of like the wild, wild west. I think it's,
Sure.
a lot of times you just get bots filling up these Telegram rooms with the occasional like human that's just like one token.
Yeah, I used to love Discord in particular. It's so body now. It's really hard to kind of, have community there and manage it and moderate it, and then Telegram is just very loud. It's just like
Yeah.
a stream of, information. It's like I can't keep up with it.
Yeah. Token gating actually helps. If you have token gated
Yeah,
channels on Discord, that helps a lot.
absolutely. Next question. For social media, X or TikTok?
Ooh, X for now, but TikTok is definitely tempting with the right use cases, especially if you have like an actual like AI consumer facing product. Those actually do really well on TikTok. I know uh, a lot of founders who are doing that, and it's been quite successful for them.
Nice. Preferred LLM for workflow?
Um, None. I just yell at a Google Docs and pace around my room, hoping that something comes to mind. No, I use ChatGPT primarily. It's still kind of like the bread and butter. I don't know if it's just
Yeah.
because it's what I started with, but it's it's what I love. I know it, and I love it.
Yeah, ChatGPT is pretty good. Preferred productivity tool?
Notion for sure. However, I will caveat that I tend to treat it like my own brain, which, if you don't know me, I have ADHD. So that essentially means I use it like crazy for about a week and then forget to update it for 2 weeks, and everyone gets mad at me.
Yeah, I actually, that's a popular one, is Notion for a lot of people. What about Notion is useful? I haven't really used it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really so. I think a lot of people aren't using it properly. So one thing that I did here was make sure that we were able to cross. I have like one giant calendar that everything exists on, and then we are able to use that to like interconnect every single thing in the company. So like our social calendar is connected to that. Our blog calendar is connected to that. Any content calendars, launch calendars, all of that's connected within the same calendar. A lot of people on Notion tend to like have separate calendars for everything, but then not everything is cross-linked. And the beauty of that is you can create some like pretty good workflows and some pretty good checklists, and just get like really good title reviews of what everybody on the company is working on. Like it Notion is magic to me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll have to check it out then.
Yeah.
And then who is your favorite Web3 figure or personality?
It's gonna have to be Zagabond. I'm an OG Azuki, and Azuki was my first NFT, and I love him.
And then who's your favorite AI figure?
Um, I need to give a shout out to our co-founder and CEO, Sean Wren. He
Fair
has
enough.
been such an instrumental part in helping to teach me everything that I know about AI. So for that, like I will always be super grateful to him.
Awesome. And then Joules, what is on the roadmap here for Sahara going into the rest of this year? What are some key things that you guys are working on that people will find out in terms of milestones later on in 2025, as well as any engagements, conferences, events maybe you guys are attending? What should people know?
Yeah, I definitely stay check out our Twitter. That's where we keep all of the updates. Next up is going to be our open ecosystem, open testnet launch, which is happening mid-April. So we have lots of surprises coming out with that. We also have mainnet launch that is currently scheduled for Q3 2025. So we have a lot coming out before that. Data services platform, we are probably going to do our open launch before mainnet. And then AI Studio as well. Probably have our open launch for that before mainnet. So definitely stick around, stay in touch, and follow us on X.
Awesome. And is X the best place to keep up? Or should they also check out anywhere else on socials, LinkedIn, website?
Yeah, join our waitlist. I email everybody. That's the first place that we tend to send our alpha is the waitlist. Then we'll post on Twitter and Discord. But yeah, X is one of the good places, and then Discord is the other one.
Awesome. We'll put all the links in the description below so people can find it very easily. But Joules, thank you for taking the time today. Really do appreciate it. Been a really good conversation. Learned a lot about what you guys are doing with Sahara, but also just generally in terms of marketing. I think these are some really good tips and insights for a lot of other people that are probably looking for ways to navigate AI and Web3 as well, and maybe can apply it in their own right. So appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.